in a special way. It's true, they had synagogues sprinkled throughout wherever Jewish people were. That was a place of teaching and prayer. But the place of worship and sacrifice was the temple in Jerusalem. There's only one temple, and it was in Jerusalem. Now, what was the problem? Well, the actual problem, was that the money changers and those selling animals had set up shop in the temple area itself. And in a sense, they're literally robbing the people of the ability and of the place to come and pray in the house of God, the most sacred place. They had literally turned part of it into a zoo. And so that's why we hear in our gospel reading this strong reaction of Jesus in the temple. It says he made a whip out of cords, drove them all out of the temple area with the sheep and oxen, spilled the coins of the money changers, and overturned their tables. And to those who sold doves, he said, "Take these out of here and stop making my Father's house a marketplace." You know, I think it's important for us to see and to hear this event, because oftentimes Jesus is described in the Gospels as a calm, collected person, a man sometimes sad or disappointed or frustrated, but mostly a compassionate and merciful and wise teacher and miracle worker. But today's gospel gives us an insight into really the humanity of Jesus, and we need those to truly know Jesus as he really is. Jesus is angry, and rightly so. They were desecrating the temple area. He's filled with a righteous anger. He's angry that they were disrespectful and even sacrilegious in the temple itself, the Father's house, the place of encounter with God. And it's such a great lesson for you and for me, because it's important for us to know that there is a place for anger in our lives. There is such a thing as a righteous anger, a just anger. When we look at the world out there beyond those doors, it doesn't take much for us to see that there are all sorts of injustices happening in our world today, and right here, even in our own country. Or on a personal level, maybe we've been offended by what someone has said to us or done to us. We're angry, and rightly so. And so, yes, there is a place for anger in our lives, a righteous anger, a just anger. But I think most of us would agree that by and large, we can easily struggle and even greatly struggle with sinful anger. Now, we have to keep in mind that it's natural for us to have feelings of anger. That in and of itself isn't a sin. It's just they naturally bubble up. We cannot control our feelings, since we feel angry. When we feel angry, it really is dependent upon events that occur outside of us. So feelings of anger are quite natural and normal. But we can control how we respond to those feelings. And so when we find ourselves feeling angry over something that's happened to us, over something in the world today, we need to ask ourselves the question, what is God wanting me to do in this situation? What is God wanting me to do in this situation? We want and we really need to go to Jesus immediately in prayer. The saints, and many saints, boy, when you begin to read about saints and the topic of anger, many saints struggled with anger, and not just a little bit. Many of them struggled a lot with it. And saint after saint tell us that we want to avoid discussing the matter at hand or making decisions or correcting a person when we're angry, because normally it just doesn't end up well when we do. And we often know that from firsthand experience. No, the saints remind us that we first need to cool down. We need to try to regain our peace, our composure, and even get some separation for a time. Because left unattended, left unchecked or unresolved, we can begin to dwell on that anger over and over again. And my just anger begins to turn into sinful anger, where it begins to fester inside of me. It becomes kind of a toxin inside of me. That's why St. Paul says in his letter to the Ephesians in chapter 4, he says, "Be angry, but do not sin. Do not let the sun set on your anger." and do not leave room for the devil. The evil one wants us to keep those hurtful memories and those hurtful feelings alive in our minds and hearts. He wants to stoke that fire, keep throwing sticks on the fire of anger. Because sinful anger, properly understood, is the desire for revenge. It's that turmoil and tension inside of us that can rob us of our peace and even consume us if we let it. That's why St. John Vianney once said, anger never travels alone. It's always accompanied by other sins. And it's true. If we let it, anger can take on forms such as bitterness, resentment, unforgiveness, actual revenge, where I want to get even and actually seek to do it, passive aggressiveness, and hatred. That's the deliberately wishing of evil upon another. Make no mistake about it, battling these things in our hearts, resentment, bitterness, revenge, hatred, can be so difficult to overcome in our lives. And one thing is for certain, if we cling to them, they will never lead us to happiness or peace that we're searching for. And they can cause such tremendous harm in our relationship with God, in our relationships with others, and to ourselves. But my brothers and sisters, do not lose hope. Again, so many saints struggle with anger in their lives, and many of them over long periods of time. St. Francis de Sales, for example, has been known by many and for a long time as a man of great gentleness. He's the author of the Introduction to the Devout Life. But if you know anything about St. Francis de Sales, when you look at his life, he struggled with his temper and anger for years. And St. Francis de Sales worked with St. Jane Frances de Chantal in starting a religious order. It's the Visitation Sisters. And as they were facing opposition in this whole process of beginning this religious order, at one point St. Jane encouraged St. Francis to be more angry over the matter. She says, "Why are you not more angry over this?" And his response was this: "Why do you want me to lose in 15 minutes what has taken me 20 years of hard work to acquire?" Yes, the struggle with anger, it's real and it's hard, but keep fighting the good fight. The saints show us that all things are possible with the grace of God. And so when we feel those feelings of anger arise, again, we go to that question: what is God wanting me to do in this situation? Is he calling me to pray for this person or that situation? Do I need to take a certain action? Is he calling me to forgiveness? Because honestly, most of the time, the greatest remedy for anger is forgiveness. It's often the go-to in solving anger, forgiveness. In the end, it must have been very surprising for the disciples that day in preparing for Passover to see Jesus angry in the temple. But you know, it's a reminder for us. I'm grateful for it, because he shows us that anger can be a part of our lives in the right perspective, in the right way. And it reminds us that he's fully human. He knows what we go through each day. He knows the struggles we face in our lives. And so may we open our hearts to him, and may he give us the grace to make our hearts more like his.